Hi, this is Matt Bradley-Tschirgi. I'm back here with some news on Return to Monkey Island. There's been an interview with Ron Gilbert at AdventureGamers.com, and it has some more information I didn't cover last time. I got some notes about the sound, wasn't great, so I've adjusted some microphone stuff. Hopefully, this is coming through loud and clear. And if you like what you listen, please give me a follow, twitch.tv/matwbt. It's also on Twitter. I'm twitter.com/matwbt. You could subscribe on there. That would help as well. Great. Okay, Monkey Island, what is it? It's an older graphic adventure series. They used to call them like point and clicks uh, in the day, and it's basically like an interactive story where there's puzzles and things to solve. This genre has, excuse me, there's my cat, Dandelion. Yep, he's a Persian. Long-haired exotic, excuse me. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So these are games that people played where you go around and collect items, solve puzzles, and it has kind of a plot. Monkey Island, it had two games in the early 90s. Then there was a big break. Then there was a third one and a fourth one. And then a long break, and some of the old LucasArts guys had a company called Telltale Games that did Tales of Monkey Island. And there was remakes of 1 and 2 with voice acting and better graphics and stuff. Although you could argue if those graphics are better or not, but we'll get to that when I cover those games. Anyhow, this new one, Return to Monkey Island. There has not been a new Monkey Island game in over a decade. And the big deal is Ron Gilbert, the original designer, is coming back to do it. He was able to work out a deal. LucasArts is now owned by Disney. And through grit and determination, he was able to do it. And this interview on AdventureGamer.com from April 14th, 2022, it's with Ron Gilbert and Dave Grossman. And Dave Grossman is also a writer on and designer on the first two Monkey Island games as well. And while there was already news about these would keep the other games in canon, they mentioned some stuff about the timeline here, specifically where Return to Monkey Island starts. That I think is pretty interesting stuff here. So going through the interview, there's some like reaction to the announcement on April Fool's that this game was coming out, and they're like, no, wait, this is really serious. But he said that people described the initial release as a wonderfully crafted adventure game puzzle, which made me feel real good. It's a quote from Ron Gilbert. It's pretty neat. Also, it brings up a point that a long time ago on his blog, Grumpy Gamer, Ron Gilbert said he wouldn't do a Monkey Island game unless he outright owned the IP. Because Lucasfilm owns Monkey Island. That's not what happens, but he really was looking for the creative freedom, which they gave him, and he had a existing relationship with Nigel Lowry at Devolver, who's done a lot of indie games, and the art style, and there's some more pictures in here. I think that'll be a different stream where I just kind of react to the artwork, but I think the pictures, it's kind of a storybook style, kind of angular. Some people have kind of poo-pooed it. And the point being, if they did the original pixel artwork, people would have complained about that too. I don't think you can please everyone. And I think it's neat. Every Monkey Island game has slightly different artwork going around. So Ron Gilbert had made a game called Thimbleweed Park that was with pixel graphics and mainly perhaps some particle effects. Not technically all in pixels, but whatever. Thimbleweed Park, is a pretty neat game that got a lot of good reviews. And he was working, so other things learned from this interview, he was working on a RPG game. It's worth noting he did kind of a work on an action RPG called, I think, Death Spank. Was on PS3, Xbox 360 quite some time ago. They had a little bit of humor in the descriptions, but I think was just not quite what people were expecting with the whole Ron Gilbert thing. So the Monkey Island stuff came up. He kind of pivoted to that. And that Ron and Dave got to work together again was really neat. Both Dave Grossman and Ron Gilbert were consultants on Tales of Monkey Island, which came out way back in 2009. So that's 13 years ago. Really hard to believe. I mean, I was at the only PAX I've been to was at PAX Prime in Seattle, Washington, PAX '09, and they were, selling a box copy, I think, of Tales of Monkey Island that had just come out that had like a manual and maybe a map in it or something like that. I remember the booth for that. They also were selling like that Sam and Max cartoon on DVD for $30 or something. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on. As I mentioned, Devolver is the publisher, Lucasfilm is the IP holder, and Terrible Toy Box is Ron Gilbert's company. So they hire the team. Ron Gilbert's team is doing the design, programming, and art, all that stuff. They mentioned the team size is 25 at the most, and the reason he says at the most is when you're doing game development, you typically start with not that many people to do a game design document or to plan things out, and then as you ramp up, you have artists and sound engineers and testers and all these things, and then it kind of winds down at the end when for the promotion you pretty much need the designer, you need a few marketing people, but there you go. And so this is bigger than the Thimbleweed Park team, had about 14 people. And it has a lot more art, a lot more custom animations than Thimbleweed Park. And I think with the art style, it can get more, more moody with the lighting. I will have to do another thing here looking at the pictures, but it's pretty cool. Sarah Thomas is a storyboard artist. Everything was storyboarded out before, which they didn't have on Thimbleweed Park. That's kind of surprising, because if you storyboard something out, it's easier to work something out with storyboards early, but of course that costs time and you have to pay a separate storyboard artist to do it. That's different from, a designer doing stick figure sketches or whatnot. The art director is Rex Crowley. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. He worked on Little Big Planet and Knights and Bikes, which is a Double Fine game. I played Little Big Planet. I like that one, although the controls are kind of wonky. And it does mention what I was saying earlier about, they're 35 years past from the Lax pixel art Monkey Island game, and he talks about everyone having its own art style. So this is a quote from Ron Gilbert. If you look at these games, there have been more non-pixel games than pixel games at this point in time. He wanted to embrace something new for the art style, continue that transition, re-examine what the art was for the new Monkey Island. So what do you think? Do you like the pixel art? Do you like this style? You can kind of see it on the screenshot here to the left. You can post in the comments below on that and make your own decision. I like it. I like that it's different, and it's getting people to talk about it, which is another reason why you change the art style, right? It's just something I remember, way, this is over 20 years ago, but they had the trailer stuff for Wind Waker, and people said it looked like a baby game with kind of the anime chibi graphics with the big eyes and the mouth and all the little sound effects, and ended up being, one of the best loved games in the series. So a lot of times things get criticized early on, and then later on people kind of warm up to it. As we get towards the end of the interview, this is a really notable part I want to focus on. Way back in that blog post in 2013, Ron Gilbert was, so the question he's getting asked from AdventureGamers.com, if you make another Monkey Island game, and it would be Monkey Island, it would have taken place right after LeChuck's Revenge, is that Return to Monkey Island is? And Ron Gilbert is mentioning the ideas I had floating around in my head for what Monkey Island 3 would have been at the time. A lot of those ideas have already been done. Monkey Island 3, 4, and 5, meaning Curse, Escape, and Tales, picked up a lot of those ideas, not because they stole them from me, but they were ideas, natural ideas, so I couldn't make the actual game. If I actually made my original plan for Monkey Island 3A, as it were, on his timeline, right, people would say, oh, you're ripping off Escape, you're ripping off Curse, and so on. And they also, and I think this is a really good point, he mentions him and Dave, the two main designers on this, are very different people than they were back at the time when they made Monkey Island 1 and 2. And so, of course, the game idea they have now would be different from what's back then. But what is really cool is this last part. One of the things that was important, very important to me about this, was that I did want the game to start right at the end of Monkey Island 2 when you walk into that amusement park. I wanted the game to start there. So what he's talking about is there's a weird, trippy sequence at the end that could be a hallucination, could be a real flashback, but it implies Monkey Island is something, could be something in Guybrush's head, and him and LeChuck are, Chucky is his old brother who's kind of mean and not a nice guy, and they're all running around a carnival and getting a pirate section, and then Monkey Island is kind of like a hallucination, kids doing play. And however, at the end of Monkey Island 2, it does say, "Oh, isn't this a curse after all?" Couldn't Chuck be playing with Guybrush? And it kind of leaves it open, and people are still talking about it decades later. So that that this new game starts there, I think is really cool. As we go on, it mentions a little bit about the timeline. Oh, so Return to Monkey Island starts in the amusement park around Gilbert. Yeah, that was kind of my one criteria. I don't want to go into the details, but we do start there, and it takes weird twists and turns. And so there's a question about the chronology, because the teaser did have Murray, the talking skull from Curse on Monkey Island, who's been in the other games since. He's very funny. He kind of breaks the fourth wall and complains a lot. Kind of like me, I guess. But Ron Gilbert is Ron and Dave are talking about the chronology. How would you describe it, Dave? It's kind of amorphous. It's undefinable in a lot of ways, Dave, and possibly not important ultimately. Trying to assign specific numbers to the stories will become hard at some point. So what I take from this question, from this answer, is we're going to be jumping around in timelines, kind of like the movie Pulp Fiction or Memento or things like that. And I think it'll come to an ending. And I'm just speculating here, that will leave people guessing and talking for more. I think it will answer some questions, leave some unanswered, but you always want to keep them guessing a bit at the end. In case if there's a sequel, you can drive interest to it. But B, I think it just helps the legend lives on. If you explain everything, stories become a lot less interesting. So more about the timeline. Like Murray, can we expect to see nods to Escape from Monkey Island, Tales of Monkey Island in this game? Ron Gilbert, we very purposefully don't do anything to invalidate any of the canon that's happened in those games. We're not saying those things didn't happen. We don't talk down to them at all. We embrace a lot of the things we liked, so we're very, very careful about that. That's really tricky. I wonder if they had like someone specifically that was like a lore master that would kind of compare things, because there's so many different characters in the game, so many things go on, so many lines of dialogue, so many possible responses based on lines of dialogue. What they mean by references and all this stuff, and also with the canon, the plot of Monkey Island, while important, it's not like Lord of the Rings where it's massively building up on top of the other one. In some of the games, Elaine isn't British. Some of the games she is. Some of them she's tougher. Some of them she's more lovey-dovey. Like, they kind of go over the place. It's like with a comic book when a new writer-artist team jumps on there. But I like what the interviewer is saying. You keep it where it's convenient and you ignore it where it's convenient. Ron Gilbert. Yeah, you don't want to create paradoxes. And Dave pipes in, canon's kind of a modern idea, isn't it? Which I think is true. They try to ask about other characters in the game. It talks about Elaine, the wife of Guybrush, they get married in one of the games. Presumably they stick to that canon, who knows. Murray, the talking skull, is in it, and that's what they're leaving it now. Voodoo Lady, I think, has to be in it. If she's not in all the games, I'm pretty sure she's in all the games. She's one of the main kind of, Basil exposition that delivers the plot, that sort of a thing. From these pictures, which I'll do on a separate video, it talks about Melee Island returning to where the very first game is. And they've done that in Escape from Monkey Island and stuff, but it didn't quite look the same. But this, with the even though with the new graphic style, you can look and see how the layout of everything, right, is really, really similar. They want to get returning voice actors when they can. Some people turned them down. Some people were dead. I'm just kind of paraphrasing here. Let's see, David Fox. I mentioned in the last video he did Zach McCracken and did some work on Thimbleweed Park with Ron Gilbert, and he's the lead game programmer on Return to Monkey Island. So it's always great, these classic game developers and programmers and all that, getting back into the mix and working on these things. The composers of the older games are back, so Michael Land, Peter McConnell, and Clint Bajakian. And they do mention how his remote work changed things, and they basically talk about communication getting lost can be a problem working remotely, and having like water cooler meetings working remotely is where people can just shoot the shit. That's really useful. Or even like happy hours, so to speak, just to loosen up and talk to people you work with about stuff that's not work every once in a while. That can be a nice time, chill times or whatever. Because the socializing aspect, I think, can get lost in a remote environment, as they point out. That's an interesting point. In the physical version, they do mention they want to do a code wheel on the box. And what else? I mean, that's pretty much it that I wanted to point out. I think next time I'll go over the screenshots. There's a handful of screenshots in this article that are worth thinking about. And as this interview ends, it has a good point. What's the hardest or least fun part of working on the new Monkey Island game? Ron, the thing that's been the hardest in the project has been the stress of it being Monkey Island. There's been so many years for people to build up what Monkey Island is, and it means so much to people. And yeah, it's an excellent, excellent point. And Dave Grossman's response is, I think Ron and I have good conflict resolution skills with each other. We don't agree all the time. That's insane. That would never happen between two people. But when we disagree, we sort of get together, talk about stuff, and we figure out somebody's right, or we figure out someone cares more strongly, and we just go that way. That system has only failed us one time on this entire project. It was a casting decision, and Ron let me have my way. And then it became moot because we couldn't use that person. So I think that's a realistic answer, and I'm really excited about Return to Monkey Island. It's coming out sometime in 2022. Sure to give me a follow here, twitch.tv/matwbt. In the next video, I'll be looking at screenshots of the game and kind of compare it to screenshots from the original games, because these are mostly from what looks like Melee or Monkey Island and evoking classic locations from that very first game.